funny thing, isn't it? A man can live with barely enough to cover the rent, barely enough to feed his children, and yet he walks into a store and walks out with a brand new phone. The latest model. He knows the bill will come due. He knows. He doesn't have the cushion, but still. He buys it. Now, the world looks at that man and shakes its head. Poor choices, they say. Irresponsible, they say. As if shame has ever taught anyone how to climb out of the hole. But I've sat across from too many tired faces to judge so quickly. I've seen what pressure does to a man. What silence does. What it means to carry emptiness in your chest. And be told to pretend you're fine. So before we cast stones, let's ask something softer. Why would someone who's struggling financially reach for the most expensive thing in the room? Not always, but often enough to wonder. Why buy the luxury bag when rent is late? Why buy the flashy shoes when you still owe your brother money? Why choose the car with the high monthly payments? When your fridge hums but stays empty, it seems foolish. It seems backwards. But if you look a little closer, it's not about the object. It's about what that object promises. Because when you've been poor long enough, not just in your bank account, but in your soul, you start to crave something deeper than money. You crave dignity. You want to be seen. You want to be respected. You want to walk into a room and not feel like you have to explain yourself. So maybe, just maybe, that expensive thing isn't a thing at all. It's armor. It's escape. It's the one moment you get to feel rich, even if it bankrupts you. Now, I'm not saying that makes it wise, but it makes it human. You grow up without much. Secondhand everything. Shirts that itch, shoes that hurt, and the look in people's eyes. That tells you they know you don't belong. So one day, when you get your hands on a little money, even just enough, you buy something bold. Something that says, I'm not small anymore. Even if it's a lie. And in that moment, it doesn't matter if the food budget is short next week. You feel worthy. Just for a breath. That's the wound. That's the root of it. See, most people think poverty is only about lack of money. But often, it's about the lack of value. The kind that no paycheck can fill. So when someone poor buys something expensive, they're not thinking in numbers. They're thinking in value, in identity, in how it feels to finally own something that tells a better story about who they are. And the world is watching. Always watching, judging, comparing. So you learn to perform, to play the part, to wear your struggle like it doesn't exist. But the cost of pretending is heavy. It drains you. And the irony is, the more you spend trying to look like you're not poor, the more poor you become. I've seen it happen, again and again. Men working double shifts just to afford a car that impresses no one who matters. Women skipping meals to buy the perfume that gives them 5 seconds of status. Teenagers stealing to wear brands that don't love them back. It's not just wasteful. It's heartbreaking. Because beneath every overpriced purchase is a quiet voice whispering, maybe if I wear this, maybe if I own this, they'll finally see me. But here's the truth no one told you. The world's respect is rented. And the price goes up the poorer you look. They will make you bleed for it. And still, they won't love you. So let me ask you something, and answer softly, if you can. What are you really buying when you buy that expensive thing? Is it a phone? Or is it attention? Is it comfort? Or is it control? Do you need it? Or do you need what it says about you? We've all done it, even those of us who act above it. We've Bought things to feel enough, to look the part, to hide the fear. And if we're honest, some of us are still doing it now. The lie is subtle, but it's powerful. And it sounds something like this. If I just look successful, I'll become successful. If I just dress rich, I'll feel rich. If I just buy this one thing, I'll finally feel okay. But you and I both know the truth. It's never just one thing. It becomes a cycle. You buy, you pretend, you sink. And nobody stops you. Because in this world, looking rich is celebrated more than being free. I want to pause here, not to conclude, not to teach, just to let this settle in your chest. Ask yourself quietly, what is poverty really costing you? Not in dollars, but in decisions, in dignity. We'll go deeper soon, but for now, sit with that. Let it breathe. You ever notice something strange? When you truly don't have much, you feel this ache to prove that you do. Not to everyone, but to someone, to the world, maybe. Or just to yourself. You walk into a store, and your eyes don't go to what's practical. They go to what looks rich, polished, loud. It's not because you're foolish. It's because, somewhere deep inside, you believe that looking like you're wealthy might just be enough to protect you from feeling poor. And I get that. I do, because I've lived long enough to see this game play out, over and over. In cities and towns, in rich neighborhoods and forgotten alleys, poor folks stretching what little they have to buy a piece of the illusion, a gold chain, a designer purse, even if it's a knockoff, a car that shines but comes with payments, too heavy to carry, and you think, maybe now they'll see me differently. Maybe I'll feel different. But wealth doesn't start on the outside, and neither does poverty. Poverty begins in the mind, not as ignorance, but as inheritance, passed down not in money, but in fear. The fear of being looked down on, the fear of never being taken seriously, the fear of being invisible. So you buy something bold, not for function, but for the feeling. And for a moment, maybe a few days, maybe a few minutes, it works. People compliment you. You walk taller. You feel like you finally belong in a world that's always kept you at the edge. But here's the trap. That feeling fades quickly, and now the object owns you. It demands more. The next thing, the next upgrade, the next look. You're not spending money anymore. You're spending your future. And all to rent a version of yourself that never really fits. I've watched families spend half their savings on a wedding, just to impress people they barely like, and then go home to a house with leaks in the ceiling. I've seen young men pour their earnings into shoes they'll never wear outside, afraid they'll crease them. And I've seen mothers skip doctor visits to keep up appearances at the school gate. It's not stupidity. It's survival, twisted by pressure. Because the truth is, being poor in a world that worships wealth is a kind of shame. And shame will make you do things you swore you never would. It whispers. If you just look successful, they'll stop questioning you. If you dress the part, they'll finally respect you. But real wealth isn't loud. It doesn't need to announce itself. You know what the wealthy wear most days? Comfort, simplicity. They don't spend money to look rich. They use money to buy freedom. But when you've never had freedom, looking rich feels like the closest thing. That's the cruel irony. You reach for the expensive thing, not because you don't care, but because you care so much. You're tired of being dismissed, tired of always feeling behind, tired of being treated like a second-class citizen in your own skin. So you think, maybe this watch will help. Maybe this phone will change how they see me. Maybe if I look like them, I won't feel like me. But listen closely. You don't need to look like anyone else to be valuable. You don't need to buy your way into the room. You don't need to prove your worth with your wallet. The problem is, no one told you that. So you started to believe the lie, and now, the lie runs deep, so deep that when you don't have money, you still feel pressured to spend. So deep that when you finally save a little, your first thought is how to spend it in a way that looks good, not in a way that sets you free. That's how poverty disguises itself. Not as hunger, but as habits, as choices that don't look poor, but keep you poor. See, real poverty isn't just about income. It's about how you spend the little you do have. If every paycheck is spoken for before it arrives, if every bonus becomes a new thing instead of a new beginning, if every raise lifts your lifestyle but not your future, then you're not building wealth. You're building a more expensive version of being broke, and that's a house with no foundation. I'm not saying you shouldn't have nice things. That's not the point. The point is, do those things serve your freedom, or are you serving them? That's a hard question. But if you don't ask it now, you'll wake up 10 years from now still chasing approval, still paying off things that never paid you back. Take a breath. Look around. What's in your life right now that was bought from pressure, not purpose? You don't need to answer out loud. Just notice. Awareness is the first quiet step out of the illusion, and we'll take the next step together soon. But for now, just sit with this. You can't buy self-worth. You can only build it. And you build it, not by what you show the world, but by what you choose in the dark. You know what's strange? Some of the poorest people I've ever known were the most generous, and some of the richest were the most afraid. Fear wears many coats. For the poor, it often shows up as urgency, the need to grab what they can, while they can. For the rich, it shows up as control, the need to protect, hoard, preserve. But in both, there's the same root, a quiet voice that says, if I lose this, I'll lose who I am. That's the part most folks miss. This money thing, it's not just numbers and bills and budgets. It's identity. And for people who've lived without, the first time they touch something shiny, something new, something expensive, it feels like they're holding proof. Proof they've made it. Proof they matter. Proof they've escaped something, even if just for a while. But here's the catch. If your self-worth depends on what you wear, what you drive, what you hold in your hand, then you've built your value on sand. Because the moment you lose the thing, you lose yourself, and you'll chase the next thing, and the next, and the next, never realizing the pattern isn't about the purchase. It's about the emptiness behind it. See, when you grow up in lack, especially emotional lack, money becomes more than survival. It becomes meaning. A substitute for love. A substitute for attention. A substitute for dignity. So you dress yourself in wealth, but inside, you still feel like that kid who had to borrow shoes for gym class. And if you don't heal that part of you, you'll spend your whole life trying to out-earn the feeling of not being enough. That's why I say, this isn't about judgment. It's about understanding. Because once you see what's driving you, you can stop being driven by it. You can start asking better questions. Not how can I afford this, but why do I feel I need this? Not what will people think if I wear this, but what do I think of myself without it? Those are hard questions. Most folks never ask them, because they don't want to know the answer. It's easier to stay busy. Easier to keep chasing. Easier to keep buying the version of life they were never given freely. But easier doesn't mean better. The truth is, real wealth begins when you stop buying things to feel rich and start living in a way that builds peace, not performance, not applause, just peace. I met a man once. He lived in a small house, drove a modest car, wore simple clothes, but he was free. No debts, no performance, no pressure to keep up. And when I asked him what changed, he said this: I stopped trying to look rich, and I started trying to live like someone who loved himself. That hit me hard, because most of what we buy to hide something. A fear, a memory, a belief that we're still behind. But freedom is quiet. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to wear it. You just feel it, in your gut, in your schedule, in your soul. And here's the secret. You don't need to be a millionaire to get there. You just need to stop trading your peace for proof. That shirt, that car, that phone, it won't hold you when life falls apart. It won't raise your children. It won't make your mind quiet at night. But dignity, that's different. And dignity can't be bought. It's earned by living with intention, by choosing what serves your values, not your vanity. So next time you feel the pull to buy something to feel bigger, louder, better, pause to ask yourself, do I already have enough? Am I buying this for comfort or for approval? Is this building my future or feeding my fear? And if you're honest, your body will answer, because deep down, you already know. We all do. You just need this space to hear it. So I'm not here to scold. I'm just here to hold the mirror steady. You don't have to play this game forever. You don't have to perform. You don't have to buy your way into rooms where you were never meant to be small. You belong as you are. But you've got to believe it before your bank account ever catches up. Sit with that, if you can. We'll keep going soon. But for now, breathe. You're closer than you think. There's a quiet kind of debt that doesn't show up in bank statements. It's the debt of pretending. The cost of trying to look like someone you haven't become yet. And it piles up, not in dollars, but in anxiety, in regret, in the exhaustion of always keeping up. You know the feeling. You buy something, maybe on impulse, maybe after days of staring at it online. It arrives. For a while it feels good. You post the picture. You wear it out. People notice. But then comes the emptiness. Not just the financial dip, though that's part of it. It's the quiet realization. This thing didn't change anything. You're still you. Same fears. Same pressures. Same hunger for something deeper. And now, the money's gone too. No one talks about the emotional hangover of material decisions. The way you question yourself after. The way you start to doubt your ability to choose wisely. The way your confidence shrinks every time you trade your future for a fleeting feeling. But that's the pattern. That's how poverty tightens its grip, not just through low income, but through high emotional spending. Let me explain. See, people think spending is always logical. Need a thing, buy a thing. Simple, but that's not how it works, especially not when you've been made to feel less than when your self-worth has taken hit after hit, when you've been overlooked, passed over, underestimated. You don't buy with logic. You buy with emotion. You buy with the part of you that's tired of feeling invisible. And what's more emotional than shame? That's the part no one warns you about. Shame makes you spend. It makes you say yes when you should wait. It makes you agree to payment plans you know you can't sustain. It makes you choose looking okay over actually being okay. And the worst part is, the world rewards it. You spend beyond your means and people cheer. Nice outfit, nice car, looking sharp. But those same people disappear. When the bills come due, when the debt collectors call, when your stomach grumbles and there's only instant noodles left. See, poverty is quiet, but the pressure to escape it is loud. And when the only escape you've seen is to look rich, then every dollar becomes a stage. Every purchase becomes a mask. Every credit swipe becomes a prayer. Let this make me feel better. Let this make me feel whole. But it never lasts. Because you weren't meant to build your identity out of objects. That's why it hurts. That's why you always end up back where you started. Only this time with less. So let me ask you something. Gently. Who are you trying to convince? The people at work? The neighbors? The family members who always make you feel small? Or is it just you trying to prove to yourself that you've made it? That you're not that same struggling kid anymore? I understand. But there's another way. You can choose a different kind of wealth. One that isn't measured by what's seen, but by what's felt. Wealth that looks like peace of mind, like food in the pantry, like no late fees, like saying no to the thing you want now, so you can say yes to a life you truly want later. Delayed gratification. The poor are rarely taught it, because when life has always been urgent, the future feels like a luxury you can't afford. But I'm here to tell you, you can afford to wait. You can afford to choose differently, not because it's easy, but because the cost of not choosing differently is even harder. Debt isn't just numbers, it's a weight on the soul. It steals your sleep, your hope, your options. And over time, it teaches you to shrink, to stop dreaming, to believe that struggle is just your fate. But that's not the truth. The truth is, you're not trapped. You're just caught in a rhythm that began before you were aware of it. A rhythm that can be broken the moment you stop buying your worth. There is dignity in saying no. There is power in not impressing anyone. There is wisdom in choosing the quiet road, the one where no one claps for you, but your soul finally exhales. I know it's not glamorous, and I know the world won't celebrate you for it, but your future will, and that's what matters. Let that settle. Let it echo a bit inside you. You don't need to perform anymore. You don't need to look the part. You just need to be honest about where you are and where you want to go. The rest, it can wait. There's a moment, quiet, small, when you stand in front of the mirror, holding that new thing you bought. Maybe it's a watch, a pair of shoes, a purse with a logo. You tell yourself, I deserve this, and maybe you do. Maybe after all the hours you worked, all the pain you swallowed, you think, just once, let me feel like I matter. But there's a difference between treating yourself and trying to heal yourself with things. See, poverty has layers. It's not just empty pockets. It's the stories we believe about ourselves. The stories handed down quietly over years. You're never gonna have much. People like us don't get ahead. Dress sharp, even if you're broke. They'll treat you better. And so, without knowing it, you learn to perform. You learn to wear the appearance of success like a costume. The problem is, when the costume becomes too convincing, even you start to forget what's real. You forget how tired you are. You forget how little you've saved. You forget how close you are to everything falling apart. Because for a moment, you look good, and looking good Feels better than feeling broken, but that kind of living costs more than money. It costs your truth. You become an actor in your own life, smiling on the outside, struggling in silence, walking into rooms you can't afford to be in, just to keep up an image no one's really watching. And the scariest part? You start measuring your worth by how well you can keep the show going. But what happens when the lights go out? When the applause fades? When the debt shows up at your door and asks, was it worth it? You see, true wealth doesn't need an audience. True confidence doesn't need a brand name, but we forget. We forget because we live in a world that teaches us to be seen, not to be secure, to be liked, not to be stable, to be envied, not to be free. And freedom? It's a quiet thing. It doesn't flash. It doesn't beg for attention. It just lets you sleep well at night, because you know you're not lying to yourself. I've sat across from people who wore designer clothes, but cried when the credit card bill came. I've listened to men talk about their new truck, then whisper that they're 2 months behind on child support. I've watched women walk proudly through malls, and then hold their breath while the cashier swipes their last card. It's not judgment. It's heartbreak, because deep down, I see what they're trying to do. They're trying to feel safe, trying to feel powerful, trying to feel seen, but safety doesn't come from a purchase. Power doesn't come from appearance, and being seen means being real. You want to feel rich? Start by living within your truth. If you've got $50 to your name, and you choose to spend $10 wisely and save $40, that's wealth. Not because of the number, but because of the mindset, because you didn't buy something to impress. You didn't reach for the illusion. You made a choice. From strength. You told the world, I don't need to prove anything. I'm building something deeper. That's the real shift, and when it happens, everything starts to change. Not overnight, not loudly, but steadily. You stop chasing status. You start creating stability. You stop reaching for validation. You start planting roots. And slowly, without fanfare, your life begins to breathe. Let others chase the newest, the loudest, the most expensive. Let them play the game. Let them dress up the pain and call it pride. You can choose something different, something quieter, something stronger. Not because you're better, but because you're done pretending. And there's a kind of peace that comes when you no longer need anyone to believe you're rich, because you've started to believe you're worth building. Wealth for. Even if no one sees it yet, especially then, we'll keep going. But for now, lay the costume down. You don't need it where we're headed. No one talks about the pain. Not the pain of poverty you see on the streets, but the quieter one. The pain behind closed doors, behind nice clothes, behind the expensive shoes, sitting in a nearly empty apartment. That kind of pain wears cologne. It smiles at dinner parties. It posts photos with captions like blessed, while quietly drowning in debt. And the truth is, many people don't spend because they're careless. They spend because they're hurting. They've been told for years they weren't enough, weren't smart enough, weren't beautiful enough, weren't worthy of love, respect, rest. And when the world hands you 100 small cuts like that, you start looking for anything to feel better. A new outfit, a new gadget, a new scent that makes you feel a little more powerful, even if just for an hour. And for a moment, it works. That's what makes it dangerous, because if spending numbs the ache, even just a little, it becomes your medicine. But here's the problem. You're treating symptoms, not the cause. No purchase can heal a wound in your spirit. no object, can erase a lifetime of being made to feel invisible. And yet, we try. We try because it's the only thing that gives us a sense of control. Even if it's a false one, we say things like, I work hard, I deserve this. And maybe that's true, but the question isn't, do you deserve it? The question is, does it serve you? Because some things feel good, but leave you hollow. They feed the hunger, but not the healing. You see, healing doesn't come from adding more. It comes from finally stopping and listening to what the ache is really saying. It's saying, I want to feel valued. I want to feel safe. I want to feel like I belong in this world. And you do. But not because of what you wear. Not because of what you drive. Not because of the name on your handbag. You belong because you are here. Still breathing. Still trying. Still waking up every day, despite the weight. That alone makes you worthy. But poverty has a way of making you forget that. It convinces you that your value is external. That if people don't see your worth, then maybe it's not their. So you spend to be seen. And each time, the silence returns louder than before. Because deep down, you know the truth. You were never meant to chase love through purchases. You were meant to learn how to love yourself without needing permission. I know that's not easy. Especially when you've been through things no one ever apologized for. When you've been overlooked, dismissed, told to just work harder. But healing begins when you choose to stop performing. When you stop buying the lie that says, if I just get one more expensive thing, I'll finally feel enough. Let me tell you something. You were enough before the thing. You'll still be enough after it, but you've got to let that truth in, even if it hurts, even if it feels foreign. Even if your whole life has been built around trying to prove otherwise. It's okay to want beauty. It's okay to want comfort. It's okay to want to feel proud of how you look. But when your peace depends on the purchase, it's not peace. It's performance. And performance is a prison. So I'll ask you this gently. What would it feel like to be free from needing to impress anyone? What would it feel like to walk into a room and not care what they think because you already know who you are? That's the kind of wealth no one can sell you, and no one can take from you. You build it quietly, one honest choice at a time, one moment of restraint, one decision to heal instead of hide. It's not flashy, it won't get likes, but it will give you your life back. So next time the urge comes to spend, to prove, to escape, pause. Ask the deeper question. What am I really trying to feel right now? That question might just save you more than money. It might save you. You know, there's a quiet fear that walks with people who've been poor for too long. It's not just the fear of not having enough. It's the fear of looking like you don't have enough. It sounds small, but that fear controls people more than you'd think. You've seen it. The friend who makes just enough to get by, but insists on wearing designer shoes. The family member with a mountain of credit card debt, but always has the newest phone. You might ask, why? Why spend what little you have on things you don't need? And the answer isn't stupidity. It's survival. Because in many places, especially in poor communities, perception becomes a form of protection. If you look poor, you're treated poorly. You're ignored, underestimated, sometimes even disrespected. But if you dress the part, if you look successful, people give you a little more grace, a little more space. Sometimes even a little more opportunity. That's the twisted logic of poverty. You spend money you don't have, so people don't treat you like you're worthless. And it works. Until the bill comes due, and that's the tragedy. Because people are stuck in a cycle. Buy to feel respected, gives go broke, gives feel ashamed gives. Buy again to cover the shame. Round and round it goes. What no one tells you is this: the fear of looking poor keeps you poor, because while you're polishing the outside, the inside is starving for wisdom, for stability, for a future. And here's the hardest truth to face: looking rich is easy. Becoming wealthy is hard. Looking rich takes a credit card and some insecurity. Becoming wealthy takes discipline, humility, and the courage to be misunderstood. Because yes, people will judge you. They'll say, "Why are you still driving that old car?" They'll laugh at your basic clothes, your thrift store finds. Let them. What they don't see is that while they're paying off things they can't afford, you're buying freedom. Freedom to sleep without anxiety. Freedom to walk away from a job that disrespects you. Freedom to invest in your future instead of performing for the presentth. A yay, of ignoring the pressure to look rich. But I get it. The pressure is real. No one wants to be treated like they're less than. So let me tell you something I wish someone had told me long ago. There's no shame in building slowly. There is no shame in living beneath your means. There is no shame in saying, "I can't afford that yet." In fact, that's where your real strength begins. Because when you no longer fear looking poor, you start making decisions from wisdom instead of worry. You stop buying to impress people who don't care about you. You start saving for things that actually matter. Like peace, options, legacy. You don't need to explain your choices to anyone. You don't owe them a performance. Your future is not a stage. So if you're afraid of looking poor, ask yourself, what do I think being poor says about me? Does it say I'm lazy, stupid, less valuable? Where did those ideas come from? And why do you still believe them? Because here's the truth. Your worth is not determined by your wardrobe. Your intelligence is not tied to your phone model. Your future is not defined by what they think today. Sometimes, the richest person in the room is the one who looks the most ordinary, but owns everything in their life. No payments, no pretending. Just peace. That's a kind of wealth the world can't see, but you can feel it. Every time you make a decision that aligns with your future, not your fear, you become freer. So go ahead. Drive the old car. Wear the simple clothes. Eat the humble meal. Because you know something they don't. You're not behind, you're just focused. And that kind of focus, that's the beginning of true wealth. You ever notice how often people buy what solves the problem right now, but not what solves the problem for good? The poor man buys the cheapest shoes, knowing they'll fall apart in 6 months. The cheap phone that breaks. The second-hand appliance that guzzles power and dies too soon. And before long, he's back at the store. Buying again, paying again. Bleeding money in small, quiet drips. Not because he's careless, but because he feels he has no choice. Because when money is tight, you don't think long-term, you think survival. That's the curse of short-term living. You're always putting out fires. Always one step behind. Always spending more in the long run, just to keep up in the short run. And it becomes a way of life. But here's the truth you've got to swallow. Poverty teaches people to buy. With emotion, not strategy. With urgency, not wisdom. You buy what makes you feel better today. Even if it costs you more tomorrow. You buy the name brand shirt because it gives you a moment of pride. Even if it means you eat noodles for a week. You buy the payday loan Because the bill is due, even if the interest drains you for months. You trade future peace for present relief. And it feels reasonable. Until you look back and see the cost. That's the poverty trap. You're always reacting, never planning. Always responding to pressure, never building protection. Now listen closely. This isn't about blame. This is about patterns. Because even when you start making more money, if your thinking doesn't change, your spending won't either. You'll keep buying fast, cheap, loud, temporary. You'll keep solving the same problem 5 times when one wise purchase could have ended it. Wealthy people don't think like that. They think in decades. They think in durability. They spend more once to spend less over time. They buy quality, not for status, for stability. A poor man might scoff at a $200 pair of work boots, but the rich man sees it as protection. For his feet, his health, his time. The poor man buys 3 pairs for $60 each over 2 years. The rich man buys once and keeps moving forward. It's not just about money. It's a mindset. Do you think beyond the moment? Do you weigh the lifetime cost or just the price tag today? Because when you start thinking long term, everything changes. You stop chasing deals and start chasing value. You stop asking, what's cheapest? And start asking, what lasts the longest? What serves me over time? That's what changes your future. Not just how much you make, but how far each dollar goes, how intentionally it moves, how quietly it works for you, even when no one's watching. And here's the good news. You don't need a fortune to start thinking like one. Even small money, spent wisely, becomes powerful over time. One durable pair of shoes, one reliable appliance, one skill you invest in that pays you for life. That's how you break out. Not with a lottery, not with a raise, but with a new rhythm, one that says, I refuse to buy my problems twice. I refuse to trade long-term peace for short-term pride. Every decision becomes a brick. And brick by brick, you build something solid. Something that doesn't blow over with the next crisis. So ask yourself, do I want the feeling of winning today? Or do I want the reality of winning for years to come? Because one of them fades. The other compounds. Poor people stay poor, not just because they don't have money, but because they never learn to respect it, not fear it, not worship it, but respect it. And respecting it means thinking long, thinking slow, thinking wise. That's where freedom begins. You don't always buy because you need something. Sometimes you buy because you're hurting. Because for a moment, that thing on the shelf, that bright screen in your hand, that package at your door, it softens something you don't want to feel. And that's the quiet part no one talks about. We talk about poor spending like it's foolish, like it's just bad math. But more often than not, it's not math at all. It's medicine. That overpriced shirt, it made you feel like somebody. That car you couldn't afford, it made you feel seen. The perfume, the phone, the handbag, they gave you a moment where you didn't feel small, where you didn't feel left out, where you didn't feel like everyone else had something you didn't. Single quotes. And when you grow up with less, when you feel like life has already handed you the short stick, you don't just want stuff. You want to feel whole. So you buy, not to impress, but to heal, even if it's just for a night. But healing doesn't come in a box, and the pain you bury under luxury, it always finds a way back, because you can't dress up a wound. You have to tend to it. You have to face it. You have to ask, what am I really trying to fix? Is it the loneliness? The feeling of never being enough? The shame of looking poor in a rich world? Because the world's designed to feed that. Hunger, billboards, ads, influencers. They show you what you're missing so they can sell you the cure. But the real cure isn't something you can swipe for. It's waking up one morning and saying, I don't have to prove anything today. I don't have to pretend I'm rich. I just have to move wisely. That's what the rich know. Wealth isn't loud. It's quiet. It's calm. It's not gold chains or designer tags. It's control. Control over your time, your choices, your energy, your future. And that kind of wealth starts inside. It starts when you stop using money to cover pain and start using it to build peace. It starts when you say, I don't need to be seen. I need to be free. Now listen close. This doesn't mean you can't ever buy something nice. It doesn't mean you can't enjoy beauty or comfort or pleasure. But you've got to know why you're buying it. Who you're trying to feed, your body or your ego. Are you nourishing yourself or escaping yourself? Because once you stop buying from pain, once you start spending from purpose, money becomes something different. It's not a drug. It's a tool. It's not your therapist. It's your servant. You direct it. It doesn't direct you. And suddenly you start buying less, but living more. You start needing less approval. Because you approve of yourself, you stop reaching for validation. Because you know your value is not a receipt. This is the turning point. When spending becomes intentional. When money stops being a mask and starts being a mirror. So take a breath. Look at the last thing you bought and ask yourself, was that for comfort or was that for clarity? Because one fades fast, the other builds forever. You see, poverty doesn't always begin with money. And it doesn't always end with money either. It begins with pain, with trying to belong, with trying to matter in a world that makes you feel like you don't. And that's why it sticks around. Because the habits that keep you poor don't always look like poverty. Sometimes they look like trying too hard, spending too much, reaching too far, wanting too badly to be seen as someone you're not yet ready to be. And no one tells you this, but the way out isn't flashy. It's not loud. It's not quick. It doesn't get applause. It's quiet. Almost invisible. It looks like walking past something you used to buy and realizing you don't need it anymore. It looks like wearing the same coat 2 winters in a row and still feeling proud. It looks like sitting with the discomfort instead of spending to silence it. It's not fun at first, but it's freeing. Because every dollar you don't spend is a brick in the foundation of your freedom. Every cheap meal cooked at home, every old phone that still works, every humble choice that no one claps for. They're all part of the shift. They're all signs that your mind is healing, that you no longer need to look rich in order to become rich. And one day, you'll walk into a store and see the expensive thing you once couldn't resist and smile, not because you can't buy it, but because now you know you don't need to. You'll walk out lighter, stronger, clearer. That's the real wealth. Not what you carry in your hands, but what you no longer have to carry in your heart. Because the truth is, you were never poor because you had less. You stayed poor because you kept trying to hide that you had less. And now you're not hiding. You're building. Brick by brick, day by day, quiet, simple, steady. And someday soon, you'll look around and realize you're not in the same life anymore. Because something changed in you, not your salary, Not your job. You. That's the real exit. And you're already walking it, so keep going. And if this helped you, pass it to someone who's still in the dark. Someone still reaching for the expensive thing, thinking it'll fix what's broken. Let them know what they really need. Can't be bought.